Her adopted son tried to freeze her accounts, then sued her for mental decline. Evelyn Roth, former social worker and quiet matriarch, didn't flinch. Jake, the boy she once rescued and raised, called it protecting the estate. By week's end, his name vanished from her trust, her house, and every legacy he mistook for entitlement. She'd spent decades as his advocate. Now she was her own defense. And when he came to reclaim what love had once given, the court answered with proof she never owed him anything. All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor. Subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. The laughter didn't match the words. That's what struck Evelyn the most. From the kitchen, she could hear the clink of silverware, the murmur of conversation, the lazy drag of Jake's voice slipping into something slick and careless. "Come on," he said loud enough to cross the room. "It's not like Mom's real family. No DNA, no obligation." The table chuckled, polite and uncomfortable. Evelyn froze mid-reach for the casserole dish. Her fingers curled slowly around the handle. Then Nora chimed in, a sugary edge under her wine-sweet voice. "Just paperwork, right?" That one landed like a slap. Evelyn didn't move. She stood in the kitchen's soft glow, her reflection in the microwave glass faint and trembling. Her hands, those same hands that had held Jake through night fevers and heartbreaks, through scraped knees and spelling tests, were now clutching the counter like it was the only thing anchoring her to the floor. From the dining room, Ellie's voice. "Grandma." Evelyn blinked and turned. Ellie stood in the doorway, her eyes big and uncertain. She was holding a napkin in one hand, forgotten. "I'm okay, sweetheart," Evelyn said, forcing air into her lungs. "Go enjoy dessert." The girl didn't move at first, sensing something had cracked wide open. Then slowly she retreated. Evelyn turned back to the counter. The silence of the kitchen wrapped around her like a curtain. That night, when the house had emptied out and the dishwasher hummed its lonely rhythm, Evelyn moved through the dark with quiet precision. Her bare feet padded across hardwood as she entered her bedroom and opened the closet. Behind old sweaters and a dusty quilt sat a small gray safe. She punched in the code, Jake's birthday, and winced as the lock disengaged. Inside, neatly filed and undisturbed, sat the blue folder. She took it out with both hands like it was fragile, sacred. It had been years since she opened it. Inside were documents bound by staples and time. Final adoption order, state approvals, photos from that day in court. Jake in a too-big blazer, holding her hand so tight his knuckles turned white, her face radiant, proud, young. There was even a crayon drawing he'd made weeks later. Him and her holding hands under a crooked sun labeled, "My Forever Mom." She ran a hand over it, her throat tightened. A brittle yellow sticky note fluttered loose in her own handwriting from years ago. "Legal doesn't make it real. Love does." She stared at that line for a long time. Then she reached for her phone, scrolled until she found the name. Linda Dorsey. It rang twice. "Evelyn," the attorney answered, groggy but alert. "Everything all right?" Evelyn stared at the blue folder, then past it, at the mirror across the room, where her reflection stared back, tired eyes, spine straight, lips pressed thin with resolve. "I need to rewrite something," she said, a pause on the other end. "Then your will." Evelyn closed the folder. "Number my intent." Morning filtered in cold and thin through the lace curtains of Evelyn's study. The heater kicked on with a tired rattle as she sat at her desk, the blue folder beside a cup of cooling chamomile tea. Her glasses rested low on her nose, eyes scanning the pages of her last signed will. Jake's name stared back at her in bold ink. Primary beneficiary. She exhaled, not startled, not shaken, just aware, like finally seeing the fine print on something she'd always assumed was safe. The pen in her hand tapped gently against the desk, then stopped. By late afternoon, she was parked outside a government building she hadn't entered in over a decade. A wind chime jingled from the entrance as she stepped inside the Ada County Child Services Archive Center. The front desk clerk barely looked up. "Appointment. I'm here for Caleb Knox." The name brought a change in tone. "Room 207. He's expecting you." Caleb was older now, beard flecked with gray, his blazer rumpled from use, not fashion, but his smile was still warm, still real. Evelyn Roth, he said, standing. Haven't seen you since Ellie's preschool graduation. They hugged briefly, a kind of practiced fondness. Then he gestured to the chair across from his desk. I won't take much of your time, Evelyn said, sliding the blue folder toward him. I just need one thing confirmed. Caleb opened the folder, his thumb brushing the familiar papers. This is still legally binding. Jake was adopted through the full permanency statute.
No reversals, no gray zonas.
I know, Evelyn said, voice even. My adoption of him was irrevocable. Her gaze held his. But my estate isn't. Caleb blinked, then sat back slowly, lips pressing into a thoughtful line. That's correct, she stood. That's all I needed to hear. Later that evening, the sky dipped into navy as Evelyn sat across from Linda Dorsey in the polished quiet of the attorney's downtown office. Linda flipped through the documents Evelyn had brought, her eyes narrowing. You want to restructure the trust discreetly? Yes, Evelyn said. You'll need to create a living trust that bypasses probate, keeps things private, fully revocable until death. Evelyn nodded once. Does Jake know you're doing this? No, Evelyn said. And he doesn't need to. Linda closed the file and leaned back, her expression unreadable. You sure this is the road you want to walk? Evelyn smiled gently, but without softness. I paved it the day I signed his adoption papers. Now I'm just drawing the boundary lines. A few days later, the new trust documents were complete, sealed, locked in a separate folder, filed in a fireproof drawer Evelyn had emptied the night before. The house was quiet that afternoon, the kind of winter silence that held its own weight. Evelyn was preparing tea when the front door creaked.
Grandma.
Ellie's voice lit the air like sunlight on old wood. In the kitchen, baby. Ellie walked in, shedding her jacket, cheeks pink from the cold. She leaned against the counter, watching Evelyn spoon honey into a mug. Mom said, "You're basically retired furniture now," Ellie said with the brutal honesty only children could carry. That you don't really have to be asked about stuff. The spoon clinked inside the cup. Evelyn didn't speak for a moment. Then she crouched beside Ellie, taking both of her small hands in her own. You know something, Elle? What? Furniture gets dusted and forgotten, but a foundation holds everything up, even when nobody notices. Ellie looked confused, then thoughtful. She leaned in and hugged Evelyn tightly, the kind of hug that didn't rush. Evelyn closed her eyes and held her granddaughter close, the scent of her shampoo mixing with the faint vanilla of the kitchen. Outside, the wind picked up. A pine branch scraped against the window, and inside Evelyn's chest, something long buried shifted. Not broken, just dislodged, like a door slowly unlocking. The text came at 7 a.m., just as Evelyn was pouring coffee into her favorite chipped mug. Jake. Hey, thinking of doing a party for Ellie. You'd want to help, right? She'd love it. We're pricing venues now. The second message came barely 10 seconds later, like it had already been written, waiting for a yes. Evelyn stared at the screen. No greeting, no how are you? Just assumption, neatly packaged as affection. She didn't answer right away. Later that morning, as the fog lifted off the hills outside her window, a third message arrived, this time from Nora. Nora, guest lists almost final. Just a heads up, keeping your seat near the side door. It's cleaner for the group shots that way. No stress. We'll handle all the hosting. The exclamation point was surgical. Evelyn let out a quiet breath, then turned her phone face down. That evening, she made the transfer, the full amount Nora had hinted at without the back and forth. No conditions, no ceremony. But she emailed the caterer herself and asked one small thing. Remove her name from the invoice. No record, no gratitude expected. Let it be anonymous, she thought, like she already was. The party was held at a rented event space just outside downtown Boise. All white walls, balloon arches, and Pinterest-approved charm, pink and gold everything. A rented character actress in a sequined gown posed near the bouncy castle while parents chatted over wine spritzers. Evelyn arrived 5 minutes early, not because she was eager, but because she'd learned over time that showing up early meant fewer eyes, fewer explanations. "Mom," Jake said, surprised. "You're actually early." "I brought something for Ellie," she replied, holding up a small square package wrapped in cream paper and tied with a velvet ribbon. He nodded and gestured vaguely toward the gift table. "Nora's just organizing stuff. We've got it covered." Evelyn placed the package down quietly and walked into the main room, scanning for her granddaughter. Ellie stood near the dessert table, tiara slightly askew, cheeks pink with excitement. She waved the second she saw Evelyn. "Grandma." She ran up and hugged her tightly. Evelyn smiled. "Happy birthday, sweetheart." From across the room, Nora approached, heels clicking on polished concrete. Her eyes flicked to the modest package Evelyn had brought, then to the album tucked under her arm. "What's that?" she asked, too smooth to be curious. "Photos," Evelyn replied. "From the day Jake became mine." Nora's lips curved. "That's nostalgic." Her voice held the same tone one might use for a worn-out yearbook. Evelyn met her eyes, unflinching. "It's important to Ellie. She asked about it once." "Well," Nora said lightly, "I guess it's not really relevant anymore, but thanks." She turned before Evelyn could respond, already calling out instructions to the photographer. Evelyn sat at the edge of the party beside the gift table near the exit, watching people buzz around her like she wasn't there. The adoption album rested quietly in her lap, unopened. They sang Happy Birthday. Evelyn clapped along softly. Nora passed around slices of cake. No one offered her one. No one noticed when she stood, brushed the crumbs off her skirt, and walked out. Outside, the sun had already dipped behind the mountains. Cold air clung to her coat. She held the album tighter against her chest as she crossed the parking lot, her heels echoing off the pavement. She reached her car, opened the door, and paused. A voice, soft and hesitant, called from behind her. "Grandma." Evelyn turned. Ellie was standing near the building, jacket unzipped, cake frosting still on her fingers. "You forgot this?" she said, holding up a folded paper napkin. But her eyes weren't on the napkin. They were on the album. "What's that?" Ellie asked. Evelyn hesitated, then slowly walked toward her, knelt down, and placed the album in Ellie's hands. "Ask me one day," she said. "When you're ready, I'll tell you everything." The morning after the party, Evelyn stood in the sunroom, watering her peace lilies with slow, measured care. The house was still, save for the soft trickle of classical piano playing from the small Bluetooth speaker on the windowsill. Her phone buzzed once on the table. Instagram. Nora Roth posted a new photo. Evelyn didn't usually check, but something made her tap it open. A carousel of polished images filled the screen. Ellie in her tiara. Nora beaming like a showpiece mother. Jake's hand resting lazily on the back of her chair. Guests in curated poses. Cupcakes arranged like a brand campaign. The caption read, "All love, all ours. Wouldn't trade this tribe for the world. Jock a blessed birthday. Dar family matters." No mention of Evelyn, not even a token tag. She stared at the screen, then turned it face down beside the watering can. That afternoon, she met Caleb at a coffee shop tucked behind the courthouse, half bookstore, half cafe, with overstuffed chairs and whispering regulars. He was already seated when she arrived, a stack of files at his elbow, cardigan pushed up at the sleeves. "I've been thinking," Evelyn said, easing into the seat across from him. "About Ellie, about contingencies?" Caleb nodded slowly. "You're still listed as her fallback guardian. That hasn't changed. And that still holds?" she asked.
Legally, yes.
"It's based on your adoption of Jake. Your custodial tie to Ellie is next of kin. If anything happened, I'd be first in line," she finished. He hesitated. "It would take substantial legal intervention to change that." Evelyn sipped her tea. "Then let's make it stronger." 2 days later, in Linda Dorsey's office, Evelyn slid a freshly typed document across the polished oak desk. "A letter of intent," Linda read aloud, adjusting her glasses to outline Ellie's emotional, educational, and developmental needs. Who she is, what she loves, who she trusts. Evelyn nodded. She's 10 now. But things change. If I'm not here one day, I want the courts to hear me before anyone else. Linda's eyes softened. We'll attach it to your trust packet quietly. No filing trail unless it needs to surface. Good, Evelyn said. Keep it clean. Keep it private. That weekend, Jake stormed into her foyer without knocking. His boots tracked snow onto the hardwood. I just got a notice from the bank, he snapped, waving a folded paper. Joint accounts frozen. Evelyn didn't look up from the puzzle she was working on at the dining table. They weren't joint, she said calmly. You were a secondary. I've updated the structure. You're cutting us off? His voice pitched. Are you serious right now? I'm correcting access, she replied, fitting two pieces together. That's different than cutting. Jake's nostrils flared. Ellie's your only grandchild. What do you think this does to her life? Behind him, the front door opened again. Nora entered, snow still clinging to her designer coat. What the hell is this? She demanded. You're sabotaging your own family. Evelyn stood now, meeting their energy with a cool steadiness. I'm not sabotaging anything. You're taking everything back. What kind of message does that send? Nora's voice cracked with performative disbelief. Evelyn walked toward the mantel, picked up a framed photo of Jake as a child, eyes round, smile wide, and looked at it for a long moment before setting it gently down. Then she turned. I'm just setting you free, she said. Isn't that what you wanted? The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was final. As Jake and Nora left in angry, sputtering whispers, Evelyn returned to the puzzle. She placed one last corner piece into place, pressing down until it clicked. Then she pulled a new manila folder from her desk drawer. At the top, Ellie Roth Contingency Planning Private. She opened it and added one more page. A photo of Ellie taken at the party. Tiara Askew, frosting on her chin, eyes wide and wondering. And beneath it, Evelyn wrote one line in pen. What's written can be rewritten. Jake sat across from the loan officer, trying to keep his tone measured. His dress shirt was crisp, his pitch rehearsed. A new business venture, a modest ask, a family property to back it up. He slid a single-page printout across the desk. That's my mother's address. She's backing me. Long-term collateral only. The banker, a man in his early 50s with thinning hair and an allergy to small talk, adjusted his glasses and began typing. He paused, then typed again. I'm sorry, the man said. You're not an authorized party on the deed. Jake straightened. What do you mean? That house has been in my family for over 30 years. My name's on the will. That may be, but legally the house is held in a private trust. You're not listed on it. I'm not authorized to proceed with this application. Jake stared at him like he hadn't heard the words right. She's my mother, he said, jaw tightening. I grew up in that house. The banker slid the form back across the table. I suggest you speak directly with the trust's administrator. That conversation happened in the driver's seat of his truck, engine idling outside a gas station. Jake's fingers punched at the screen like he meant to bruise it. Evelyn picked up on the second ring. You changed the trust, he said. No greeting, just thunder. Evelyn was at home folding dish towels. Her voice came through calm, distant. I updated it. You took my name off the house. I replaced it, she said. Ellie is now the successor trustee. There was silence on the other end, then a bitter laugh. She's 10. She won't be 10 forever. You can't just, God, this is insane. You're being manipulated. You're not thinking clearly. Evelyn folded the towel with military precision. I've never seen things more clearly, Jake. Then she hung up. 3 hours later, Linda Dorsey received a sharply worded email from Nora. Subject line in all caps, RELEGALWARNING, YOURCLIENTISNOTWELL. Beneath it, a rambling tirade accusing Evelyn of cognitive instability, coercion, emotional fragility, and potential elder neglect by third parties. Nora threatened a very public exposure if Evelyn didn't reinstate Jake's original beneficiary status. Attached were screenshots of a bank login error Jake had received, presented as proof Evelyn was being controlled. Linda skimmed it, took a single sip from her Diet Coke, and typed back without hesitation. Regal warning. Your client is not well. We're not the ones hiding anything. Attached were screenshots of the trust restructuring timeline, notarized documents, and Evelyn's clean capacity affidavit from just 2 months ago. A quiet kill shot. She CC'd Evelyn and Caleb, but Jake wasn't finished. The next day, Evelyn received a certified letter delivered by a process server wearing cologne too strong for the porch. She opened it alone, seated at her dining table with the morning sun spilling over her hands. It was a formal petition, Jake Roth versus Evelyn Roth, filed under petition to assess mental capacity of elder and freeze modifications to estate assets. He was trying to block everything. She read every word twice, then stood slowly, letter in hand, and walked to her study. She pulled out the safe key from the hidden drawer and opened the lower cabinet. Inside were family files, utility statements, insurance logs, and at the very back, a leather-bound folder labeled contingency. Should he turn? She placed the letter inside, then reached for a small black flash drive taped behind the cabinet wall. She plugged it into her laptop and opened a folder marked video. A soft static played. Then Evelyn appeared on screen, recorded weeks ago. Her voice filled the room. If you're seeing this, it means he went further than I thought. Evelyn stared at herself. And now, the video said, we stopped playing nice. The clinic's waiting room smelled like lemon disinfectant and low-budget air freshener. Evelyn sat in a padded chair near the window, legs crossed, hands resting over her purse. A nurse called her name gently from the door. 2 hours later, she was seated across from Dr. Minerva Lang, a blunt woman in her 70s with owl-shaped glasses and zero tolerance for medical theater. Well, Mrs. Roth, the doctor said, flipping through a printed summary, your cognition scores are in the 97th percentile for your age group. Processing speed, recall, emotional regulation. Nothing concerning. Frankly, your file's cleaner than mine. Evelyn didn't smile. She just nodded. Please send the results to Linda Dorsey's office. She's expecting them. Dr. Lang closed the folder. I'll mark them urgent. That evening, Linda sat in her office, the medical file still warm from the printer. She clicked open a blank legal document and began typing a formal response to Jake's petition, false and defamatory claims regarding diminished mental capacity. Halfway through drafting, she stopped to reread Jake's filing again. The arrogance in the phrasing, the assumption that age equaled weakness, made her pulse tick slightly harder. When the letter was done, she clicked send, not just to Jake's attorney, but with carbon copies to the court clerk, Caleb Knox, and the county registrar. The defamation filing was clean, direct, and surgical, a warning shot with weight behind it, and attached, of course, was Evelyn's neurocognitive scorecard. Back at home, Evelyn set up her phone on a small tripod in her study. She adjusted the lighting, straightened the collar of her cardigan, and pressed record. A red light blinked to life. Her voice, when it came, was steady. Ellie, if you're watching this, then something changed. Maybe not today, maybe not for years, but I wanted you to know the truth from me. Not from papers, not from whispers, and certainly not from people who only see you as leverage. She paused, letting that sit. I adopted your father because I loved him. I stayed because I believed in him. But now I am choosing something else. I'm choosing you. She took a breath. No matter what gets said, no matter how things unfold, your story starts with love and ends with choice. I will never let someone rewrite that part. She reached forward and stopped the recording, saving it to her encrypted drive. Then she labeled the file Ellie Truth Message Final, MPP4. At a corner office downtown, Jake stood behind a glass desk, his tie loosened, voice rising. You said this would work, he barked at his lawyer, pacing. You're pushing a capacity claim with zero evidence, the attorney replied, arms folded. She took the test, Jake. She passed. Any further digging, and this court could see your petition as retaliatory. Jake stopped. So what? We just drop it? No, but tread lightly. You keep going this route, You risk triggering a full financial abuse review. You could lose everything you're trying to control. Behind the office door, Nora watched silently, arms crossed, fingers drumming against her elbow. "You're not handling this," she hissed later in the parking lot. "You're reacting." That's exactly what she wants. Jake lit a cigarette. She's playing games. She's playing the long game. Nora snapped. "You'd better catch up." The next morning, Evelyn sat in her car outside Riverbend Charter Academy. The school's front office was painted in soft blues and greens, the entryway full of posters about kindness and courage. Inside, she met with the director and submitted an official update to the emergency contact list. "Please remove Jake and Nora Roth as primary contacts," she said. "They're no longer authorized for pickup or communication." The woman at the desk glanced up. "Should we notify them?" Evelyn's eyes were still. "Let them find out the same way I did." Quietly, she left the paperwork signed, stamped, and filed. That evening, the security camera at Evelyn's front porch caught motion at 9:16 p.m. A man walked up in the dark, hoodie up, body language fidgety. Unsure, Jake stood at the door for almost a full minute. He didn't ring the bell. Instead, he slipped a folded envelope into the mail slot, then walked away without looking back. Evelyn found it the next morning. Inside, a single sheet of paper with 4 typed words, "You won't win this." She folded it once calmly, then added it to the fireproof drawer just beneath the file labeled "Ellie Future Protections." The upstairs hallway creaked faintly under Evelyn's slippers as she opened the door to the guest bedroom, the one no one used anymore. Sunlight streamed in at an angle, illuminating the old mahogany bookshelf against the far wall. Jake's bookshelf, or at least the one that once held his childhood participation ribbons, school art projects, and the stuffed bear from his first ER visit. Evelyn reached for the second shelf from the bottom, the one she'd left untouched all these years. A thin layer of dust coated the edges of 3 shoe boxes. She brought them one by one to the bed. Inside were layers of memories she'd cataloged over time, not out of nostalgia, but out of devotion. Jake's elementary report cards, counselor notes from his middle school years, a thank you note from a teacher Evelyn had fought to keep from failing him. Photos, too. Birthday parties where he was the only child who didn't notice she'd made all the decorations by hand. She opened her desk and retrieved a blank leather binder. The label she affixed to the front was simple: proof of parenthood. For the next 6 hours, she sorted, dated, and wrote annotations. She didn't pause for lunch, didn't check her phone. When she finally closed the binder, her fingers lingered on the cover. It felt heavier than its pages. At Riverbend Charter, the school office phone rang twice before Miss Anukika picked up. "Riverbend front desk," she said brightly.
"Hi," Nora said.
"This is Ellie Roth's mother. I'm trying to access her student schedule and emergency forms." "I'm sorry," Anukika interrupted, polite but firm. "Due to recent authorization changes, we can't share that information." "I'm her mother," Nora repeated sharply. "Now you have no right to block me." "Ma'am," the woman said carefully. "You're still listed as a guardian, but your contact privileges have been restricted. You may request an access review through official channels."
Click.
Nora stared at the phone like it had insulted her. Across the room, Jake scrolled through his inbox without speaking. Meanwhile, at her dining room table, Evelyn quietly completed a form she'd been meaning to address for over a year: the medical power of attorney revocation. She signed it neatly, dated it, and made 2 copies, one for her files and one for Linda. Jake's name was removed as her healthcare proxy. Her new emergency medical contact was Caleb Knox. Caleb stood in the hallway of the Health and Human Services building, phone pressed to his ear. "You're really doing this?" he asked. Evelyn's voice came through steady. "It's not about cutting ties. It's about preparing for the truth." "Which truth?"
Caleb asked.
"The one where I may not be able to speak," she said. "And the one where Jake's already stopped listening." There was a pause. "Then I'll begin drafting the backup guardianship petition for Ellie." Quietly, that weekend, Evelyn stood at a wooden podium in the multi-purpose room of the Boise Community Center. Behind her, a banner read, "Senior Rights and Estate Integrity." Who really holds the pen? She wore a navy blouse and soft wool slacks. No jewelry, just the binder clutched in her hands. When I adopted my son, she began, I never thought I'd need evidence. I thought love was loud enough, but paper speaks when people stop listening. The crowd murmured gently, heads nodded. Years ago, someone told me, you can't legislate love, but you can protect it. You can document it, and you must because you can't steal what's already proven. Applause followed. Not raucous, respectful. A few people in the back stood to clap. A local reporter scribbled a quote. Afterward, as she gathered her notes, a woman approached, gray hair in a bun, eyes kind but searching. Was that your granddaughter in that photo slide? The one in the tiara? Yes, Evelyn said. She's why I rewrote everything. That night, Evelyn returned home and placed the binder on the same bookshelf Jake had abandoned long ago. She slid it into the center between his old copy of Where the Red Fern Grows and the unopened yearbook he'd refused to sign. Then she stepped back and studied the shelf. Just beneath it, she opened a drawer and removed a sealed envelope. Inside, a notarized copy of the medical revocation and guardianship file. She sealed the envelope again and labeled it for Ellie if it ever comes to that. As she closed the drawer, her phone buzzed. It was a text from Caleb. Nora just requested a copy of your mental health exam. Thought you'd want to know. Evelyn didn't reply. She walked back to the bookshelf, ran her finger along the leather binder one last time, and pulled the drawer shut. The room was beige in every possible way. Walls, carpet, even the polished table at its center. Generic art hung like forgotten thoughts, and a bowl of peppermint sat untouched near the water cooler. Evelyn sat at one end of the table, posture composed, binder resting calmly on her lap. Across from her, Jake scrolled mindlessly through his phone, leg bouncing under the table. Nora sat beside him in a blazer too sharp for the occasion, her expression a study in affected restraint. The mediator entered, a woman in her 40s with a clipboard and a voice practiced in neutrality. This is a voluntary pre-litigation mediation, she began. Our goal today is to discuss financial transfers and estate transitions without escalating to court. Jake scoffed before she could finish. We're here because my mother thinks getting me out of her estate is somehow noble. Linda didn't even blink. We're here because your client petitioned the court with a false claim of mental incapacity, which has since been disproven with clinical evidence. Evelyn's voice came next, quiet but not soft. You filed that before asking me a single question, Jake. Jake leaned forward. I was trying to protect what was promised. Promised? Linda echoed. Do you have documentation, an audio file, a written contract? Nora's voice cut in. We want full transparency on past financial transfers, gifts, down payments, tuition, cash support. If she's going to cut us off, we deserve to see what we've already earned. Linda opened a folder. Which brings us to this. She slid a spreadsheet forward labeled Gifts, Not Guarantees. Evelyn Roth to Jake and Nora Roth, 2009 to 2023. Every check, every tuition payment, every birthday wire transfer, every credit card payoff, all listed with dates and gift memos. The total, $143,280. No strings, no loans, just love and ink. Nora reached for it and paled. This doesn't change. It changes everything, Linda said. You didn't invest in her. She invested in you. Jake's knuckles tightened on the edge of the table. You're dismantling my life, he snapped. Everything I've built came from that foundation. Evelyn looked at him then. Really? I adopted you out of love, she said softly. Not obligation. He faltered, shoulders curling inward just slightly. So, you'll just erase me? She didn't blink. Number, I'm just correcting the signature. For a moment, there was no air in the room, no movement. Only the low hum of overhead lights and the unspoken weight of everything finally being named. Then Jake's voice cracked. You don't mean that. Evelyn didn't answer. She didn't have to. The mediator cleared her throat. We'll need to take a 15-minute recess. Jake stood too fast, knocking his chair back. Enjoy the victory lap, Nora muttered as they left the room. Evelyn stayed seated. She opened her binder again and flipped to the last page. A single sentence written by hand. A parent's love doesn't entitle a child. It entrusts them. In the hallway outside, Jake paced while Nora whispered behind cupped hands, spinning strategy through gritted teeth. She's framing this like a legacy, not a grudge, Nora said. We're playing the wrong angle. Jake rubbed his face, suddenly exhausted. So now what? Nora glanced through the window at Evelyn, still seated inside, still composed, still unshaken. We stop trying to beat her, she said. We start trying to corner her. Inside the mediation room, Evelyn quietly closed the binder and took out a sealed envelope from her purse. She slid it across to Linda. This, she said, is for when they try to rewrite history again. Linda opened the flap just enough to see what was inside. Screenshots, audio files, one email from Nora dated 6 months ago, mocking Evelyn's memory as conveniently cloudy. Linda smiled tight and sharp. Outside, the hallway clock struck the hour, and inside the beige room where legacies were being rearranged like chess pieces, Evelyn straightened her shoulders and waited for them to walk back in. The courthouse filing window was quiet at 8:37 a.m. Evelyn stood in line behind a man with a traffic violation and a woman returning custody paperwork. When it was her turn, she slid the manila envelope forward without hesitation. Civil family filing, she said. The clerk scanned the label and read aloud. Petition for protective modification of trust, citing financial abuse, emotional harm, and willful estrangement. Evelyn nodded. Yes. The clerk blinked, gave a neutral smile, and stamped the date. Filed, received, entered. The sound echoed, more final than it should have. Caleb Knox's recommendation landed on the judge's desk 3 days later. Typed, signed, and sealed, it read in part, given Evelyn Roth's uninterrupted role as a secondary caregiver to Ellie Roth and her previously documented guardianship fallback, it is this social worker's recommendation that Ms. Roth remain primary in all emergency and long-term planning decisions for the child. There were no dramatic words, no sentimental phrases, just facts, just care. When Caleb emailed Evelyn a copy, she read it at her kitchen table, tea cooling beside her. Then she placed it into her file cabinet under the folder marked Ellie, Legal Continuity. By week's end, the petition made it to the public docket. A local beat reporter from the Boise Standard, someone young and eager, caught wind of it. She left a voicemail. Hi, Ms. Roth. My name's Casey Patel. I'm following a story regarding elder trust disputes and caregiver claims. I'd love to get your side of things if you're open to it. Totally off record if you prefer. Evelyn didn't call back, but she saved the message. She knew what came next. At a cafe downtown, Nora didn't notice the community journalist seated 2 tables over. She was too focused on venting at her sister-in-law. We should have taken her off the damn Christmas list years ago, Nora hissed, stirring her coffee with unnecessary force. She acts like she's some legacy. She's an emotional liability. The words weren't said in anger. They were said in certainty. The reporter lifted her phone and tapped out a note. Jake, meanwhile, was unraveling in silence. He was pulled over outside a gas station just past midnight. The body cam footage later obtained by the county showed the officer asking him to step out of the car. Slurred speech, bloodshot eyes, the bottle on the passenger seat. Jake's name didn't make the news, but the arrest did. Evelyn watched the clip once, then closed her laptop. She didn't cry. She didn't feel vindicated either. She felt finished that night. She met Linda at the office, just the two of them. The city outside was dark, traffic thin, snow starting to fall. I want to add a clause, Evelyn said. Linda looked up from her files. To the trust. Yes, a condition. Linda leaned back. What kind of condition? Evelyn placed a typed page on the desk. 3 sentences. Any future distributions from my estate must be contingent on the heir's sobriety, legal standing, and documented acts of care or contact with me. Annual reviews required. No performance, no payment. Linda read it twice. You're serious? I'm done giving to silence, Evelyn said. If they want legacy, they can earn presents. The updated trust document was signed the next morning, notarized, and witnessed. A new clause now sat at the heart of it all, simple, blunt, and impossible to ignore. And behind that, in the copy mailed to the court, a second document was added. Ellie's scrapbook. Its cover page read, "Family, not who you inherit, but who you stay for." At 10:46 p.m., Evelyn sat by the fire in her living room, reading a book she couldn't focus on. Her phone buzzed once, a message from an unknown number. "You want us to grovel? Don't hold your breath." She stared at the screen, then deleted the message. She stood, walked to the bookshelf, and replaced the book with a new binder. Its label read, "Compliance Records, Estate Access." It was empty for now. The dining table was covered in photographs, scissors, washi tape, and thick cardstock. Evelyn moved with quiet intent, sorting and trimming as the snow outside blanketed the edges of the windows. There was no TV on, no music, just the soft rhythm of memory being handled one photo at a time. Ellie's first drawing, a sun with 3 uneven stick figures. Jake's first field trip, wearing a badge that read Family Volunteer. A Polaroid of Jake asleep on her chest, 5 years old. Post-adoption hearing. Ellie's toddler years caught in mid-giggle, frosting smeared across her nose. Evelyn pressed each one into the scrapbook with care, layering captions in her careful script. Chosen, not inherited. The day I became a mother. Ellie's first word, grandma. She worked late into the night, finishing it by hand. When she reached the last page, she pasted in a photo of Ellie sleeping in her guest bedroom just last month, her hair fanned across the pillow, one hand resting over Evelyn's well-worn copy of Charlotte's Web. At the bottom of the page, Evelyn wrote, "This is the story paper couldn't erase." Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Nora was busy filming a short video for her Real Family, Real Life Instagram series. She stood in a spotless kitchen, ring light perfectly positioned, her voice chipper but laced with contempt. "Hot take," she said into the camera. "Some people think raising a kid 30 years ago makes them relevant forever, but newsflash, love isn't a resume." She laughed, posed with a wine glass, and ended with, "At some point, old parents need to know when to bow out." She posted it with hashtags. Hashtag Modern Moms, hashtag Let It Go, hashtag Just Saying. What she didn't expect was the private account of a teaching assistant at Ellie's school who followed her out of curiosity, taking a screen recording and quietly sending it to a parent thread. Within hours, it was being shared in PDA circles and on local forums. Within a day, it landed in the inbox of the Boise Standard. Ellie, unaware of the growing storm, had taken Evelyn's scrapbook to school for a class project titled Where I Come From. She showed it in front of the class, page by page, explaining with soft pride, "This is the day my grandma adopted my dad. This is when she taught me how to read. This is the first time I saw snow at her house." The teacher snapped a photo of the last page and asked permission to share it. Ellie nodded. She said, "It's not a secret anymore." That photo, along with a cropped picture of Evelyn's handwritten caption, "This is the story paper couldn't erase," was posted to the school's newsletter, then to the district Facebook page, then unexpectedly to a national account that reposted it with the caption, "Legacy isn't blood, it's consistency." Thousands of shares, tens of thousands of likes, comments like, "She's more of a parent than half the people with DNA ties. Thank you for showing what family means. Let her know she's seen." Jake was in a marketing meeting when his coworker handed him a phone mid-slide deck. "You might want to see this." It was the reel of Nora, with a side-by-side of Evelyn's scrapbook on the other half of the screen, captioned "Real Family Doesn't Post." Jake scrolled through the comments. One name he recognized. A client had liked the video. Another had left a comment. "Unbelievable. You never really know people." His phone buzzed, a text from his supervisor. "We need to talk first thing Monday." That evening, Evelyn stepped out onto her porch, cup of tea in hand. She didn't check her phone. She didn't need to. The world had found her truth, and for once, it didn't distort it. A car passed slowly on the street. A figure in the passenger seat glanced up. Nora, pale, unreadable. Evelyn didn't wave. She turned, walked inside, and placed the scrapbook on the mantel. Just beneath it, on the same shelf, was a framed photo of Jake as a child. For the first time in months, she didn't look away. The courtroom smelled faintly of varnish and tension. Evelyn sat at the petitioner's table in a deep navy blouse, hands clasped in her lap. Linda sat beside her, flipping through annotated files, calm as ever. Behind them, a modest crowd of observers filled the benches, mostly quiet community members, a few reporters, and a scattering of courthouse regulars. Jake sat across the aisle, his jaw tense, eyes scanning the room like it owed him something. Nora sat next to him, face carefully powdered, her posture too perfect to be relaxed. When the bailiff called the next witness, a murmur swept the room. "Please state your name for the court." The woman at the witness stand cleared her throat. "Margaret J. Holloway, retired, former teacher at West Pine Middle School." Linda stood. "Miss Holloway, did you at any point instruct or work with Mr. Jake Roth?" "I did. 6th through 8th grade English. I had him 3 years in a row." "And are you familiar with the petitioner Evelyn Roth?" "I am," Margaret said. "She came to every parent conference, brought homemade cookies to our reading fair. When Jake was falling behind, she met with me twice a week. I remember telling my colleagues, 'That boy is raised by Grayson Denham.'" A small ripple of laughter ran through the courtroom. Even the judge cracked the faintest smile. Margaret continued. "She wasn't loud. She wasn't flashy, but she showed up and kept showing up. For every spelling bee, every broken bone, every B- turned B+. That's what parenting is." Jake shifted in his seat. Linda nodded. "Thank you, Miss Holloway. No further questions." Jake's attorney declined to cross-examine. Margaret stepped down slowly, her cane tapping rhythmically against the tile. Just before recess, the judge adjusted his glasses and looked toward the bench. "I understand there was a letter submitted under seal." Linda stood. "Yes, Your Honor, from Ellie Roth, minor child. She did not wish to speak in person, but requested her letter be read aloud with your approval." The judge nodded once. Linda opened the envelope with care. The courtroom fell silent. Evelyn's hands didn't move. She wrote, "I know I'm not part of the grown-up stuff, and I know this letter might not matter the way laws do, but if someone is asking who really loves me, it's my grandma. She's the only one who showed up, not just to school but to life. She always does. My parents say grandma is dramatic, but she's never once yelled at me. She always has my favorite snacks. She knows which nightlight I like when I sleep over. She's my safe place. I hope when I grow up, I become her." Linda paused. "I don't know how to explain what that means in court, but I hope someone understands anyway." She folded the letter and returned it to the envelope. Silence lingered like a fog. Nora leaned toward Jake, whispering something under her breath, but the courtroom microphone was still hot. The gallery heard it, clear as glass. "She's a manipulative old witch, and we should have cut her off years ago." Heads turned, Linda raised a brow. The judge tapped his pen once deliberately. "Ms. Roth, one more whisper like that, and I will hold you in contempt. This courtroom is not a living room, and your opinion is not evidence." Jake leaned forward. "Your Honor, with all due respect." "No," the judge said firm. "You've had your say." He turned toward Evelyn. "Miss Roth, do you have anything else you'd like to submit?" Evelyn looked up, expression serene. "No, Your Honor. Everything worth hearing has already been said." The judge nodded once.
Very well.
Closing arguments will be scheduled for next week. Until then, this court is adjourned. The gavel dropped. Outside the courthouse, reporters stood by with microphones ready. Evelyn walked past them without a word. She didn't need sound bites. She had stories, real ones, and they were already speaking louder than anything Jake or Nora could post. Behind her, Nora hissed at Jake. "You let her win sympathy. You let her weaponize the kid." Jake said nothing, his shoulders hunched in the cold. At the end of the block, Evelyn opened the door to her waiting rideshare. She looked back just once, then stepped in, closed the door, and disappeared into the city lights. Back inside the empty courtroom, the clerk collected exhibits. He paused at the handwritten letter still resting on the judge's bench. At the bottom, scrolled in 10-year-old print, P.S. I call her grandma, but she's more like the real mom in my life. The courtroom was half full, but it felt like a theater about to end its final act. The morning light slanted in from high windows, dust catching in its path. A quiet hum of murmurs fell away as the judge re-entered. He adjusted his robe, sat down, and signaled to begin. Linda Dorsey stood slowly, not rushing, not posturing. She approached the bench like she'd done it 1,000 times, but this time she carried a softness wrapped in steel. "Your Honor," she began, voice clear and warm. "We've talked about estate documents. We've examined bank records. You've heard from educators, read from a child, and listened to a woman accused of rewriting history." She turned to Jake, then to Evelyn. "But this case is not about paperwork. It's about presence, about who showed up and who turned away, about who gave, not just money, but memory, not just care, but consistency." She looked at the judge. Parenthood is proven by presence, not possession. Then she walked back to her seat and sat down like the weight of the words didn't need dramatizing. Jake's lawyer rose next, nerves visible in his fingertips. "Your Honor," he began, voice just slightly too fast. "What we have here is a painful generational misunderstanding, a breakdown in communication between a devoted son and a protective mother." The judge didn't blink. Mr. Roth has made missteps, certainly, but those missteps were grounded in frustration, not malice, and they reflect a clash of perspectives, not a lack of love. Evelyn tilted her head barely. The lawyer shuffled his notes. "We urge the court to view this not as a betrayal, but as a family dynamic in flux." He sat down without looking at Jake. The room was still. The judge turned to Evelyn. "Ms. Roth, you may speak briefly if you wish." Evelyn stood. She didn't move from her seat, didn't walk forward. She just looked across the aisle, her eyes locking with Jake's. "You were chosen," she said softly, "but you chose this." Jake blinked, but didn't look away. For a moment, he seemed like he might speak. He didn't. Evelyn sat back down. The judge cleared his throat. "I have reviewed the petition, the supplemental filings, the supporting testimonies, and the submitted letters. Based on the evidence presented, I find no grounds to overturn the trust restructuring or the guardianship contingency." Jake shifted sharply in his seat. The judge continued, "I am approving full revocation of inheritance and fiduciary rights as outlined in Ms. Roth's amended estate. This includes medical power of attorney, joint account access, and all claims to successor trustee authority." Linda's lips moved in the faintest motion. One breath of victory. Furthermore, the judge said, "I am sealing the minor child's testimony as a private record, not subject to subpoena or discovery." Jake opened his mouth, just a flicker of protest. But the judge looked at him once. "Don't," he said simply. Silence. "Then this court is adjourned." The gavel fell. It was over. Jake stood slowly, his chair scraping. His face was unreadable, like something unfinished. Nora clutched her bag tight under her arm. "Well," she hissed, already turning toward the door. "At least now she has her little martyr's shrine." She pushed the courtroom door open too hard, letting it slam behind her. Jake followed. He paused just before the door, glanced back once at Evelyn. She didn't smile, didn't nod, just looked at him like someone finally seeing through the fog.
He left.
Linda turned to Evelyn. "You okay?" Evelyn exhaled once, quiet and complete. "I am now." She reached down and gathered her things. The binder, the sealed envelope, the final version of Ellie's letter. As they walked out together, past the press and the whispers, Evelyn didn't look down. Her back was straight. Her pace was measured. The legacy she carried didn't need defending anymore. It had just been ruled undeniable. The bank lobby was bright, sterile, and full of quiet murmurs. Evelyn sat across from a young financial advisor in a pale gray suit, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. "You sure you want to dissolve this account?" he asked, glancing at the screen. "It's not a dissolution," Evelyn replied calmly. "It's a redirection." She slid a notarized form across the desk. the updated designation for Ellie Roth's 529 college savings plan. The account was no longer jointly managed by Jake Roth. Effective immediately, the custodian of record was Evelyn Roth. "And where would you like to transfer the funds?" the advisor asked. Evelyn placed a second form in front of him. "To a new independent account under Ellie's sole name. Access restricted until age 18. The advisor nodded. "Understood. That'll be completed by end of day." Evelyn stood, smoothing her coat. "I trust the money will wait longer than he did." That evening, Caleb Knox's office phone buzzed. He answered mid-sentence, expecting a clerk. It was Jake. "Don't hang up," Jake said quickly. "I just want to talk to her." Caleb didn't answer right away. "Then, you had months to talk to her. You filed paperwork instead." Jake's voice cracked slightly. "I just want to make things right." Caleb sighed. "This isn't a gate you can pound on and expect to be welcomed through. This is a lock you forged yourself." "I'm still her son." "You're a name on a file," Caleb replied. "One she has the right to remove." And she did. He hung up. In Linda's office the next morning, Evelyn reviewed the final amendment to her estate. "Everything in this document," Linda said, "is permanent upon your signature. No reversals without your direct and conscious revision." Evelyn's eyes didn't waver.
"Exclude him," she said.
Linda nodded. "Jake Roth is hereby removed as a beneficiary, successor, trustee, proxy, or claimant in any form." Evelyn picked up the pen and signed slowly, her name unshaken, a legal signature, a maternal boundary, a closing line. That afternoon, Evelyn arrived at Riverbend Charter to deliver a signed authorization to the school office. "Please add me to Ellie's pickup list," she told the front desk attendant. Effective immediately, she handed over her ID, smiled for the camera, and waited as the badge printer warmed. A laminated card slid out with her name. Evelyn Roth, authorized guardian. As she clipped it onto her coat, Ellie appeared from the hallway, backpack askew, shoes a little scuffed. "Grandma," Evelyn smiled. "Ready to go?" Ellie beamed. "Always." Later that week, Evelyn received a letter from a local nonprofit she had nearly forgotten she ever donated to, Boise Families Forward. The subject line read, "Living Legacy Honoree." Inside was an invitation to a quiet recognition event for intergenerational guardians who lead with grace. They'd seen the school newsletter, the scrapbook, the headlines. They wanted her to speak. Evelyn read the letter twice, then closed it. She didn't cry, but she smiled. Small. True. On Saturday, she and Ellie walked downtown together, stopping at a small local boutique that smelled faintly of lavender and cedar. There, in a glass case, sat a silver ring. Just one thin band, oval stone, no brand name, no price tag, screaming for attention. Ellie tilted her head. "It's pretty." "It's not expensive," Evelyn said. "But it's real." Ellie looked up. "Like us." Evelyn nodded. "Exactly." She bought the ring and handed it to Ellie in a soft velvet pouch. "It's a placeholder," she said, "for all the promises people don't think they need to keep. Wear it when you want to remember what's true." Meanwhile, across town, Jake sat in the HR office of his firm.
The door was closed.
A compliance officer beside his supervisor held a tablet. "We've reviewed the community footage," the supervisor said, "and the social threads. It doesn't align with our code of conduct." Jake's voice was hoarse. "That's not who I am." "But it's who you chose to be in public. We're terminating your client-facing privileges," the compliance officer said, "effective today, and your login credentials are already suspended," the supervisor added. Jake didn't speak. He reached for his badge, placed it on the desk, and walked out. That evening, Evelyn returned home to find a single unmarked envelope in her mailbox. No return address. Inside was a business card from a former colleague of Jake's. On the back, scribbled in blue ink, "Some doors don't unlock twice. I hope he learns that." Evelyn placed the card beside the new trust binder. She didn't need revenge.
Not now.
She had truth, and she had earned the right to protect it. The spare bedroom had always been the quietest part of Evelyn's house. Once filled with Jake's outgrown furniture, it had been left mostly untouched for years. But today, it echoed with the sound of tape ripping, laughter spilling, and furniture legs dragging across hardwood. Ellie stood on her tiptoes, trying to center a poster above the headboard. "A little to the left?" she asked. Evelyn, standing back with a measuring eye, smiled. "Perfect." The bed had a new comforter, lavender, Ellie's favorite. The shelves held a growing collection of books, each one with a sticky note Evelyn had hidden inside. "To my reader with the biggest heart, this one made me think of our stargazing night." A framed photo sat on the nightstand. Not Jake, not Nora, just Evelyn and Ellie curled on the porch swing, summer light behind them, the exact moment caught mid-laughter. Ellie walked over and traced the frame with her finger. "Is it okay if I leave some of my stuff here?" she asked. Evelyn tucked a curl behind Ellie's ear. "You're not visiting anymore, honey?" Ellie beamed. "Then this is my room, too." Across town, Jake sat alone in a rented apartment. No photos on the walls, no sounds but the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the microwave clock. He scrolled through old text chains, landing on one with Evelyn that hadn't had a new message in months. He typed, "You replaced me." He watched the dots blink for a moment, then stop, then disappear. She never replied. He threw the phone onto the couch, face down. That same week, a paralegal from Nora's attorney's office served a quiet notice to Jake, preliminary petition for legal separation. It was clean, clinical, a single page. Irreconcilable differences, underlined twice. Jake didn't respond. He poured another drink, but even the bottle was almost empty now. Meanwhile, Caleb sat across from Evelyn at his office, a large file folder between them. "This makes it official," he said. "You're not just fallback anymore. You're primary." He turned the page for her to sign. Guardianship designation, emergency directive, and health proxy for Ellie Roth. Valid in all Idaho jurisdictions. Evelyn picked up the pen and signed without fanfare. "I know it's not final, she said. But she asked. She didn't just ask, Caleb said. She made a case, a pretty compelling one. Evelyn smiled. She's got away with truth. That night, the house was filled with the scent of mac and cheese, dryer sheets, and vanilla candles. Evelyn folded laundry while Ellie sat at the kitchen table, gluing photos into a new scrapbook they'd started together. This one just for the two of them. As she pressed a picture into place, a candid shot of them dancing in the living room, blurry but full of joy. Ellie paused. "Grandma." Evelyn looked up. "You're not paper," Ellie said quietly. "You're everything." Evelyn didn't speak. She reached over and rested her hand on Ellie's. No court could order that kind of love. Upstairs later that night, Evelyn opened the hall closet and pulled down a small cardboard box labeled Jake's first year. She carried it into her own room, sat on the floor, and opened the lid. Inside was a hospital bracelet, a first school ID, and a photo of him in the same bedroom Ellie now called hers. She closed the lid slowly. Then she walked to the fireplace and lit a single match. Not to burn the box, just to warm the room. She left the box intact and returned it to the closet. Some stories don't need to be erased, just shelved. The next morning, the doorbell rang. A small envelope sat on the mat, no sender listed. Evelyn opened it. Inside was a folded page. "There's nothing left to take. But I still want back in. J." She folded it once and slipped it into the fireplace. This time she lit it and didn't look away as it turned to ash. The air was cool inside the study, faintly scented with cedar and lavender polish. Evelyn knelt on the rug, the safe open before her. Carefully, she placed 3 documents inside, each in its own labeled folder: final ruling, estate petition, amended trust. Roth, Evelyn, guardianship authority, Roth Ellie. They slid into place like the final pieces of a puzzle, no longer missing anything. Evelyn paused before shutting the safe, then added one more item. A photo not of Jake, but of Ellie, age 10, barefoot in the garden, holding a cup of lemon water, her eyes fixed on something just beyond the camera, both curious and unafraid. Evelyn closed the door, spun the dial, and stood slowly. She didn't feel triumphant. She felt rooted. Across the hall, Ellie sat at the desk in her room, hair pulled back with a bright clip, eyes focused on the laptop screen as she hit record. "This is my video project for Miss Fenley's class," she began. "We had to talk about the person we admire most." Evelyn watched from the doorway, unnoticed. "She's not famous," Ellie continued. "She doesn't have followers or a cool job or a big house. But she has the best stories, and she always remembers my favorite mug." Evelyn covered her mouth, tears welling. "She didn't just raise my dad. She rescued him. And when he forgot that, she didn't forget me." Ellie paused. "I think being loved when you're little is luck, but being chosen again, even after people leave, that's strength." She looked into the camera. "I want to grow up like her." Later that night, Evelyn moved the scrapbook, the one filled with photos, drawings, and Ellie's crayon-colored labels, from its spot on the hallway bookshelf to the center of the living room. It sat beneath the lamp now, upright in a wooden stand, its front cover visible to anyone who entered. This is the story paper couldn't erase. She didn't dust it. She didn't straighten it. She just left it there, living, visible, known. On Wednesday morning, a letter arrived in a crisp, white envelope with a court seal in the corner. The clerk's cover note was brief. "Petition closed. Judgment final. No reversals without unanimous consent of court and primary party. No pending appeals." Evelyn read it once, then filed it with the others. That afternoon, she and Ellie walked the narrow flagstone path through the backyard garden. The tomatoes had come in late. The lavender hadn't yet faded. Bees hummed softly around the rosemary. "This was my dad's favorite place when he was little," Ellie said, kicking a pebble. Evelyn smiled faintly. "He used to collect worms after it rained. Tried to keep them in shoe boxes." Ellie wrinkled her nose. "That's kinda gross." They both laughed. They reached the bench near the back fence, the same one Jake had once claimed as his castle wall. Now Ellie dropped her backpack and sprawled across it without hesitation. Evelyn sat beside her, their shoulders touching lightly. The wind stirred the trees. A blue jay darted through a gap in the sky. Ellie turned her head. Did it ever feel weird raising someone else's kid? Evelyn didn't answer right away. Then he wasn't someone else's. Not when it mattered. Ellie nodded, picking at a blade of grass. "Well, I'm not going anywhere." Evelyn reached for her hand. "I know." Inside, a copy of the trust now sat in a drawer beneath the framed newspaper clipping from the Living Legacy ceremony. Evelyn's name etched in black ink. A legacy she never wanted praised, just protected. The fire in the hearth crackled. Outside, wind brushed against the glass, and on the mantel above, the scrapbook rested beneath a simple photo of Ellie planting flowers in the backyard. Below it, carved faintly into the wood, a line Evelyn had etched herself. "He came by paper, but she stayed by choice."